sometimes it's really exciting and a breath of fresh air, especially if you're leaving an unhealthy environment.
I got cystic fibrosis. See, I've got cystic fibrosis.
Hey guys, welcome to week 2 of season 4 here on Staying Salty. Today we're going to have a kind of follow-up to last week's video where we talked about the relationship with your doctor and your care team, and this week we're going to be talking about moving or changing clinics. So for me, for pretty much every time I've changed doctors, which I, honest to God, cannot tell you how many times I've changed over my lifetime because I've had to change doctors and clinics so many times. I've had a couple of doctors move and I had a doctor die. So for those times, it kind of was just circumstantial. I really didn't have a choice in having to find a new doctor. But then, if you watched my last video, you also know that there have been a lot of really unfortunate incidences as to where I kind of just felt or I had to change because of how I was being treated. So like I said in the last video, a relationship with your doctor, and I didn't really even get that much into the care team because the doctor part took so much time, but it just, everyone that is involved in your medical care, a good relationship with them is so incredibly important. So when choosing to need to leave, for me personally, that's played a huge factor. If you're moving from pediatrics to adults, that would be another reason you would have to leave. Maybe transplant, maybe your hospital doesn't deal with transplants and you are needing to be evaluated for one. Or maybe you're moving and you have to change clinics and doctors because of that. So there's so many different reasons as to why you would need to, have to, or should change doctors. So I guess I'll start off with kind of what was my crossing line when it came to how my care team was taking care of me or what boundaries were crossed. And then I'll go into kind of how we went about switching, what I looked for in a new doctor or clinic or whatever it shall be. So let's jump into it. So basically, like I said before, if you can't trust your doctor, if they're putting you in harm's way, yada yada, all of these things, you have to leave. Rather than go on and on about the 30, 40 times I've switched doctors, I'll kind of give you a glaze over of what happened at my most recent changing of clinics and doctors. So my last doctor I couldn't have a conversation with unless I had a full face of makeup on. My hair was done, I was completely dressed up and would compliment him. If those things didn't happen, I wasn't a person, he wouldn't listen to me, and nothing that I felt or said was valid, even like my symptoms. And then any time that we would have a discussion, no matter how I was dressed, if I was dressed like a hobo, if I was dressed like, whatever, his focal point was strictly on my breast. And, listening to my chest and my lungs and whatever, he would stay on certain areas as, when you put those two things together, you feel very uncomfortable. I didn't start off going to him and being like, I have to dress up so, he can listen to me, whatever. It was a literal trial and error. I would go in and I wouldn't be all dressed up, and literally, nothing I said was valid. And then there would be times that I had to go somewhere after, or I just felt like dressing up that day because, sometimes girls just want to dress up for themselves. And then he would talk to me and he would listen to me and we would come up with a plan or whatever, some sort of plan. It would be not as much as what I needed, but it was more than I was getting before. It all felt really off, but whenever they didn't have any other doctor for me to go to at that time, I didn't feel I had any other choice than just to do what I could to get the medical care that I needed, which involved complimenting his shoes and wearing a full face of makeup and whatever. Just to give this guy a little bit of background, my first admission with him, he threatened to go over the insurance's head and bill my parents thousands of dollars to the point that they would lose everything because I felt that I needed to stay in the hospital longer and he didn't want to do the paperwork. He said that. My second and last admission with him was planned for about a month and a half. And it was planned to the point that I had had almost daily conversations with his nurse the last 2 weeks as to when I would be going in. And so I go with my bags packed and, you know, my plan to stay. And I went without any makeup on or anything because I was planning to go in the hospital. And I don't feel like staying in a hospital with makeup on because, you know, you shouldn't have to. I walk in there as myself, and the second he looks at me, he doesn't say, "Hi, how are you feeling? You know, are you whatever?" He says, "Oh my God, your face is so broken out." And I'm like, "Actually, it's not. I have a little bit of scarring, but it's basically nothing." And he just, for the next half an hour, rather than talking about what's going to go on in the hospital, will only talk about my face and how we can't have it looking like that. Which made me feel great. I don't know why my doctors are so concerned about my physical appearance, but, you know, I'm more worried about my lungs failing and not my face. So, I asked him, you know, about the hospital, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Well, what's the plan? What IVs are we gonna do? You know, whatever." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I'm going in the hospital today." He didn't put in any orders. So he puts them in after I beg him, because I'm like, "Dude, I'm coughing up blood. All of this stuff is happening. I need to be in the hospital." So puts me in the hospital. I'm in there for 3 days without him ever coming to see me or them doing cultures. He comes to see me and he's like, so they just did standard blood work whenever I first got there. He said, so your blood work came back perfectly fine, so you're healthy, so you're going home. I'm like, "Excuse me?" And I was getting no oral antibiotics. He was not giving me the PICC line, and I was not getting IVs. And yeah, he was sending me home because I was healthy, even though I was obviously not. I couldn't go without flat out just throwing up because I had been coughing that much. Everything was just all distorted. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? He told me to go see my pain doctor. No idea what that has to do with anything, but whatever. So I have no choice. I leave the hospital and I go back about a month later, still not better. And, but then a culture is done, and I found out from my ENT when it grew, because he didn't tell me and I had her look it up. My culture grew back things I haven't grown in like 7 years, and then my Pseudomonas that I've had since kindergarten is now the strongest it's ever been, and I'm now Toby resistant, which I never have grown before. It's like, look, I'm growing this. I knew I was growing it before she even told me, because you can legitimately see like the fungus growing in, like the lime green fungus growing in the mucus. Like it looked like the stuff growing in the bayou outside, growing inside of me, which it is. And so I'm like, look, this affects me so much. And this has always affected me so much when it does grow. This is what I'm usually put on. You know, I haven't grown it when I'm with you, so I'm just telling you what my history was with it. And you know, I know the Pseudomonas is growing like this now, and I don't know what your plan is. Like, can we just please talk about this? He, at this point, I guess, was just done with me, with wanting to be my doctor, because I guess he never really wanted to be in the first place. He tells me that he's not going to treat me, that the stuff is growing in my lungs. And bear in mind, I'm at like 60% lung function at this point. He's like, the stuff is growing in your lungs. You have CF. There's stuff growing in your lungs. It's always going to be there. There's no point in treating it. The only way that we're going to treat it is if we're going to take the lungs out. What? I'm nowhere needing a transplant. Say what now? So whenever he, that was the line with him. Whenever, it wasn't going to just be like this sexual harassment and me having to, be eye candy for him. It was, he wasn't going to treat me. So that's when I decided right then and there, I can't live like this anymore. I have to find a doctor that's going to treat me or I'm not going to be able to live. I'm just going to keep getting sicker and sicker and sicker till I'm at 30% again, and then it's going to keep getting worse, and I'm never going to get any treatment till they take out my lungs, which I don't want them to do. So, yeah, that was my point with this doctor, where the line was crossed and I stayed way longer than I should have, but I didn't think I had any options. Then one opened, and I went to see the new doctor. I had her fax over a request that I filled out for them to get my records from my other hospital. And my stuff was switched over to her. All of my lung care is put into her hands now. And yeah, so I've met this doctor before and she's phenomenal. So I'm not really I don't really know the nurses and all that much quite yet, but I'm getting to know them. And, so far it's great, and it's a great environment. Plus it's actually closer to home, so it's a huge benefit for everybody. And, yeah, it's actually the hospital I was born at, so that's great. When it comes to finding a new clinic, you have to find a doctor that you can talk to. You have to find an entire care team that you trust. You have to find, hopefully it's in a reasonable distance. Cafeteria food being good isn't that bad. Or, scope out good surrounding places for your parents or your significant other or whoever to get you food from. Because if you're going to be in the hospital, those are some things you might need to scope out. But yeah, just make sure it's a clean environment. The sanitation is up to par, you can just scope that around looking. If there's no blood all over the place and cockroaches running across the hall, you're doing better than some hospitals. But, just to keep your eyes open, trust your gut, trust your better judgment, stick up for yourself. That's something that I really learned out of all of the experiences that I've had. Each one I kind of learned something different, just kind of like each relationship, no matter what kind it is, ending. Anytime something ends, especially on a bad term, you always learn something from it. And I know to never, ever, ever, ever stoop myself down to dressing a certain way for a doctor. Never let them speak to me like I'm nothing and worthless, because I know I'm not, and no one's worthless. I really my voice has gotten a lot stronger because of this, and I know really to stick to my morals. But I just know that I can put my 2 cents in a little bit more, which I'm gonna do. So yeah, that's kind of my experience with changing doctors. It can get, a little scary when you're in a new environment. You have to learn a whole new protocol and procedures that they go about doing things, but sometimes it's really exciting and a breath of fresh air, especially if you're leaving an unhealthy environment. Sometimes doctors like to have a new, fresh file to where, you know, you go and get all new blood work done, x-rays, CAT scans, sputum, whatever, just so they can have kind of like a baseline for when you start with them, which for the majority, whenever I've gotten new doctors, they've gotten all of my old files, but they've also wanted a new baseline, kind of where to go from my first day with them, which I kind of really like because you never know when your health could change. So if they're going off of things that happened when you were in a different environment with a different routine of medicine, you know, things could be different. So if any of you guys have any comments on what it was like for you to switch clinics, if you ever have, or any concerns for if you need to, or you're going to soon, or if you're thinking about it, leave them in the comments down below. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you can keep up with the other amazing videos that we have coming up, because we have some really, really cool ones coming up for the rest of this season and for all the seasons that's yet to come. Check out our old videos if you're new to the channel, and be sure to stay tuned to what everyone else has to say about their experiences for the rest of the week. I hope you guys are all doing well, and I'll see y'all next time.